Welcome to Winning Inside, the show where we follow the journey from feeling defeated to winning. Here are your hosts, Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman.
Hello, amazing people. Welcome to the Winning Inside podcast, where we discuss real issues, insights, and solutions to help you thrive in your day-to-day lives.
We know life happens, and we can choose to be a spectator or a participant.
Wow. I'm just going to start with this. You are good. As I was talking, Michelle was cracking up, and she was cracking up and composed herself just in time to say her lines. That was impressive, and I'm going to let everyone know you did it. That was pretty awesome. How are you today?
I'm good. I first of all, I just want to add this one part that we were laughing. No surprises there before we started this portion of the recording. And I think the last thing I said was fun needs to be part of everyday life. Like you need to experience fun and laughter every single day. And if you aren't, then find someone who makes you laugh or do something that makes you giggle and just let loose because you really need it. Like
Absolutely.
It should be a baseline. Yeah. So anyway, that is not the subject matter that we're talking about today. Maybe we'll discuss it another time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the laugh. It was necessary and it was needed. And it definitely has elevated my mood. I wasn't in a down mood, but I was in a frenzy. And I think we're probably going to, I was really in a frenzy and a whirlwind. And sometimes you got to find a way to kind of just stop and just take a breath, look around for a quick second. And when you're in that frenzy, you can't do that. So, Michelle, thank you for the giggle. Give me a clean mental break, and here I am. So.
Well, it's so funny. Okay, so I guess it does apply. So earlier this week, Cheddy was sharing with me a specific example of stress as it showed up in his life. What was that, last week?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was late last week, right?
Last week. Yep.
And do you want me to tell the story? Would you like to tell the story?
Please, you can tell it.
I can tell it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Cheddy is studying, working towards his MBA, and it is intense, to say the least, right? So it is a full course load, essentially, but they are in classes like 3 days a week, but you have insane amounts of homework and complicated homework at that, particularly when you're involved in economics, and let's just say economics because that was the specific example. So Cheddy was explaining to me, like, you have to understand, when I looked at the paper, the homework for the first time, it was like the words were upside down and numbers were backwards and everything was inverted. And I was reading a foreign language that was from outer space. I don't know. Right. Like it just made no sense to me
whatsoever.
And he's like, at first I just kind of had that moment where like, this isn't real. And then it was kind of like panic. And we could laugh about it now, but like, you know, when he's, I
wasn't laughing last week.
No, he wasn't laughing when he was in panic, right? And Cheddy is one of the most determined people when it comes to completing the task at hand. Like he's very determined, very focused. And when we're talking, as you can probably tell, not as focused, which is totally fine. But when it comes to his work, he's very focused. I am telling you that this poor man was working on the same, one problem or two problems?
One problem. Actually, one problem. There's 4 problems in total. One problem.
Right. Because it's like whatever, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4.
Yeah.
So essentially 4 problems for like 10 days straight.
Yes.
And so the longer that he stared at it, the longer that he worked at it and was getting, not the right answers, or just more and more confusion started building up, the stress really just started to compound, right? So you can just imagine where at first you're like frustration and you just keep at it, you keep at it because you're diligent. You know that at least in the past in my life, when I continue to work on something, I can make progress, right?
Exactly.
It's all it takes is not quitting. However, because of the mental state he had started to like create within himself as he was getting the wrong answer over and over again. And like the self-doubt started to creep in on top of the stress of like, oh my God, I need to get through this so I can get to all my other work. I almost cursed. All my other work that needs to be done. Self-doubt started to creep in, which affects so many things, right? Like we discussed, it not only does it affect the work that you're doing and the quality of the work that you're doing, but it starts to affect the relationships, your interpersonal relationships, your partnerships, even how you communicate, or even if you're communicating at all, right? Because Cheddy is one of those people that will reach out to you on a daily if you're, one of his close friends, or periodically if you cross his mind, he just reaches out and say, hey, you're on my mind. Hope you're doing well, or whatever. One of those things. It's fine. We'll talk about that too later. So that being said, he was in a panic. And just like he said earlier today, I was in a frenzy. So thank you for that pause.
Yes.
So what happened is after 10 days of working on the same set of 4 problems, the amount of stress and frustration and self-doubt that had piled up, he couldn't see, what do you call it? You can't see what is it? The trees through the forest or something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't see the forest for the trees.
I always say it backwards.
Yeah. I knew what you meant.
So his partner said, hey, come down and watch some TV. And at first he was like, no, I ain't got time for that. Right. And I think he was sort of in a zombie state where he was like, fine, I'll just do it because I care about you and I want to spend time with you too. And he said he was able to just be there, be present, be with her, enjoy, and sort of like tune out for a little bit and let the information and like entertainment and data from the show just come into him versus him like processing over and over again. So as we talked about that, what he recognized, and he sort of just said it offhand, right? Like I asked him a simple question. I was like, well, why do you think that worked? Because what happened was when he went back to the economic problems, like all of a sudden something sort of popped. Something finally moved. There was movement made. And then once that happened, something else shifted in him and he was able to like make more progress. And he said it was like microwaving popcorn, right? There's like nothing for 2 minutes straight. And then like 30 seconds, there's a slow pop. And then for like 15 seconds, it's like chaos.
Yes.
That was what he experienced with this economic problem. And I said, well, why do you think that happened? He's like, well, because I just stopped the thought. And then he just kept talking and talking and talking. And I was like, stop. Let's go back to that. I will repeat that. He's like, I just stopped the thought. I was like, yeah, it's exactly what happened. He just stopped the thought of, I can't do this, because that was a thought that was going on from the moment he picked up that piece of paper and was like, holy crap. Yes. He immediately thought, I can't do this. And he had that thought with him for 10 days straight as he got wrong answer after wrong answer after wrong answer and increase of stress. But when he went down and was able to like just detach completely for a little period of time, he stopped the thought, I can't do this. And when he went back and approached his problem, it was like he was just approaching it as if it was information without the thought. So he had stopped the thought, I can't do this, and everything changed. And so today I'm like, that's perfect. Cheddy, I'm like, you did it. But stopping, just pausing what's happening in your head, pausing when you're in a lot of stress, and that, that stress response, that stress cycle is happening in your body. Yes. The power of pause in your life.
Exactly.
Can be transformational.
I'm so glad you said that, because, we work in this space, but yet this still happens. We talk about this stuff all the time, but yet I was in it, in the throes of this for myself. And how many times have we walked people off the ledge when they're in that space? Well, that was me last week. Let's be honest. That was definitely me. I knew it, couldn't stop it. And it started out finally like, oh, this is really tough. I got to work at it. Got to keep digging in. And you dig in and it's getting harder and harder. And the level of frustration was getting consuming. It was hurting my body. I was getting headaches. I'd pop up in the middle of the night thinking about economics, had dreams about economics. had dreams about economics. I mean, I was like, there's floating graphs in my head, like numbers were swirling. Like, that is not good. I'd wake up in the morning, jump out on the computer, and I'd stay up late at night till my body was just like, we're done here. And just having that pause changed everything on the other side. I almost wish I had done it earlier, but I just got into this loop. I can't get it right. I can't stop until I get it right. And it's interesting how Michelle saw it and recognized it immediately. But because I had allowed myself to get in that cycle, I couldn't see it. And it caused it, having a third party kind of stop me by distracting me, really. Just asking, hey, can you hang out downstairs? Doing that enabled me to just take a break. And I came back and everything looked different. And like Michelle said, she's absolutely right. The numbers, the graphs, everything was just flipping and swirling on the page. And all of a sudden, the data just started to settle down and made more sense. And the thoughts were coming sequentially in my mind instead of just coming like as an explosion. And you have no idea how much stress was relieved when that happened. I may not get every question right, may not, but at least my thoughts were coherent and I was calm and I was understanding the concepts. I was like, this makes sense. Oh, I didn't get it before. Oh, and it's interesting how we do that in our own lives. This was just economics. We do this in relationships. We do this in our jobs. We do this in places that really matter, not just in an academic setting, but with our families, with the people that we care about, with things that we allow to just get us into a loop where we just kind of double down on the same thing that is self-destructive or is not constructive at all. And we've got to find a way to break that cycle. And Michelle, what can you think of as ways to break that cycle? I mean, because there was definitely a cycle that had to be broken. And you called it out. You identified it. You saw it. I didn't. But I know this stuff. And I still didn't see
it. First of all, you made a very valid point. When we're in it, oftentimes it's really challenging to recognize like the level to where we're at. So if you don't have necessarily an established habit where you're sort of gauging throughout the day what your stress level is, like a lot of people actually will check their, heart rates, things of that nature, because that will definitely reflect it. So if you have an Apple Watch or something that shows you your heart rate, just checking in on that throughout the day. You can even set an alarm on your phone to check like twice a day of, how are you feeling? What's your stress level 1 to 10? Because unless you pause yourself, you just keep barreling through. I mean, you do it. I did it for many, many years in work, right?
Yes.
Where it might be a stressful work environment, but you're just barreling through because you're like, I got to get all the way to, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whenever you get off of work. And you think once I get to that point, then I can take a deep breath or I can go have a drink or whatever it is that you try to do to cope with the stress. Right.
Exactly.
But that's all you're doing is sort of like saying that you're identifying the work as the problem that's creating the stress, right?
Yes.
But it's not the work that's creating the stress.
Say it.
It's
your
coming. Thoughts about the work.
It's the thoughts about the work.
Yes, exactly. And so that's what's the power of like checking in and what's your stress level is like, what thoughts are showing up for you right now, right? And when I said, stop, you got to say that again. Oh, I stopped the thought. It's like, he just said it casually because I was like, dude, this is what we do all the time, right? When we're talking with our clients, we're like, what is that thought creating in your body?
Yeah.
Where is that thought coming from, right? And frankly, it is just our brain being a human brain, right? Because our human brains have a tendency to want to protect us and want to keep us safe. So they'll look for all of the scary negative things around us. And that's what's going to like call into attention unless you create a practice of calling in and focusing on things that are good, like Gavin. Oh my gosh, I called you Gavin. Cheddy's practice of gratitude. That's an example, right? Yes. It's an example of pausing the thoughts that are creating stress in your life. So one of the things that I say first and foremost, once you recognize that you have stress that's showing up to help you pause a thought is to make sure that your body is in a regulated state, right?
Yes,
so you're
correct.
not in necessarily an active stress response when you start doing thought work. Because if you're
Yes.
and this is a lot of words. So you guys, if you have any questions, please reach out.
Yeah.
But this is like important work because we have got to be back in our bodies. Oftentimes we're so much in our heads, we're so disconnected from our body sensations that we cannot stop the stress cycle, the stress response cycle in our bodies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what Cheddy was experiencing. He was in this active, ongoing stress response cycle because every time he got an answer wrong, he thought something else worse about himself. I'm incapable. Maybe I shouldn't be here, like in terms of like being in this course, things of that nature. And so his body would react to those thoughts of like, oh my God, like fear or stress or anything like that. All these normal human feelings and emotions, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not then pausing to regulate your nervous system, you're just continuously responding and sort of releasing all of this like adrenaline and cortisol because you're experiencing stress after stress after stress. And yes, we're talking about this in the context of quote unquote homework, but like you have to imagine kids in school experience this when they can't figure out math. And I remember getting so frustrated with my son because first of all, I don't understand how they teach math these days.
It's changed.
In elementary school, because I was like, didn't your teacher teach you? Or middle school, right? And he's like, no, I don't know. But it's like a different language. And when you feel like it's incredibly important for you to do really well, you actually have a full on stress response.
Absolutely.
Activated nervous system, right? Like the fight, flight, or freeze. And most people will like want to avoid that feeling. And so they'll quit doing what they're doing because it's like, nope, I'm done. I'm going to avoid it.
Yep.
Or they'll do something else. Like maybe they'll go eat.
Yep.
I might have done that on occasion. Some people might drink, right? So when you recognize that you're in this activated nervous system situation, you want to pause, just totally pause and take a deep breath through your nose, a long, deep breath, like 5 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, and then exhale through your mouth very slowly. Another 5 to 7 seconds to try to get all of that breath out, just all the way down to the bottom of your lungs. And do that 3 times. And what that's going to help you do is activate your parasympathetic nervous system, try to relax a little bit more. You're not in this heightened state. So it's one of the best and easiest activities that I will literally do when I'm driving my car and people are driving like maniacs. Yeah. And you can do it anytime. Other thing that you can do is shrugging your shoulders, like trying to bring your shoulders all the way up to your ears as strong as you can, and then pushing them backwards, like you're pinching your shoulder blades together, and then slowly bringing them all the way back down, and then pushing them down as far as possible, and straining your muscles, like really like pinching your earlobes with your shoulders, pulling the shoulders backwards as if you're pinching your shoulder blades together, and then back down again. Do that 3 times. It's a way for you to get out of your brain and feel the sensations of your body. So you're reconnecting to your body. So some of these, they call them sort of somatic practices or exercises, are just a way for you to just kind of relax and get back into your body so that when you are thinking like, what is it that I want to think instead of I can't do this? That your brain isn't like populating with, I can't do this, but then, why don't you have this? You should have had this, you've been working on this for 10 days, like all this negative thoughts that are just popping in and showing up because that's what your brain does.
Yeah.
So you got to push pause, no matter how silly it seems. Like I'm telling you, there are apps, you can put an alarm on your phone to take 3 deep breaths and just do that 3 times a day.
I appreciate that because let's be honest, when I was in that space, my body was racked with pain and I knew it was stress related because it was no stress, All of a sudden, I'm in this stress cycle, and the pain was my back was hurting, my neck was hurting, my shoulders were hurting. So as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, she's absolutely right. Because I could feel it and knew it wasn't because of any physical injury or any physical exertion. It was just mentally, I was so spun up that it was causing my body, as you said, to just manifest the stress that I was mentally feeling. I started to manifest it physically. And my body was in pain. I mean, everything was in pain. Headache, sore throat, back was aching. And it's funny because I'm like, this is all stress related. I feel fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sick. I don't have a cold or anything. I don't have a flu. I haven't been working out enough to like be sore. This is just stress. This is just me in my, and I knew it, but it was like, and even though I knew it, I was still like, but I got to get this done. I'm not a quitter. I got to keep doing this. And it's interesting how, even though I knew, I didn't do. I knew better, didn't do better. And it took someone like you and my lovely lady to actually kind of pause that, just to get me to, hey, take a second, breathe. And if you think about children, sometimes when I see a child that's mad and angry about something, I try to distract them long enough to help them to pause and just think about something different. And you can see the mood will change. They'll stop crying. Maybe they'll start laughing, or they'll stop being angry and they'll think about something else. And then we just kind of go into a different place. And once they're calm, now we can go back and have a conversation about the issue that made them angry or upset or whatever. And that works with children. It works with adults too. And I didn't realize it. So Michelle, first I want to say thank you to you, because it really helped for you to make me aware that I did that. Because what can be a positive attribute can turn into a negative one. And like you said, I'm determined. I can be very determined, and I don't like to quit. I did that to a fault in this case, because it wouldn't have been quitting. It would have been reassessing and re-engaging in a way that's just better for you. Taking a break to just calm your brain down and go in again. I didn't do that, because in my mind, somehow I told myself that was quitting. How was that quitting? And all I can think of is, you have to reframe the way we say certain things, because what was a positive for me, determination, turned into a negative. And what I thought of as a negative, i.e. quitting, was actually a pause. And it was beneficial, and it's necessary, and we need them. And we have to use them more often. And we've got to take breaks. We've got to take breaks. Breaks are necessary so you can give your best. If you don't take a break, you can't give your best. I don't see how you can. You've got to recoup, restore, so you can be revitalized again. And I didn't allow myself to do that. So I'm urging you guys to enable yourselves, give yourselves the space to slow down and take a breath, and realize if you're in that mode where things are just speeding up and things are going out of control in your mind, just find a way to slow down. Have an accountability partner, somebody who can look at you and say, hey, you're in that space again. Let's go do something real quick. Because sometimes just getting out of it and going back into it can be good enough. And if you're in it, as I was, it's hard to see. It's hard to see when you're in it. So it's good to have someone else who can say, something's different. And they can then help you to identify when you're in it. A better step, what I'm working on apparently, is seeing it before it happens, Michelle. Because if I see it before it happens, I can stave it off. I can adjust before it happens. And this goes for anger. This goes for any emotion that you don't, let's call it an undesirable emotion. Any undesirable emotion that could cause you to have an undesirable action or behavior. If you see it coming, if you can identify it, you can change it. A lot of times you can tell when you're about to get angry. You can feel the physiological things that are happening. You can feel when you're getting anxious by the way your body's reacting. Whatever it is, you know when you're about to get into that state, how your body begins to react. Learn that, identify that. So then you say, hey, I'm about to get triggered. I can feel it coming. I'm about to get angry, but I have to blow my top. Okay, I need to go do something. I need to go over here, distract myself, go find a reason to laugh, relax, change my state, and then re-engage. Because we make better decisions when we're clear-headed. That is definitely my 2 cents on the subject. And you all have the capability to overcome these situations if you're going through them, just like I did. So, Michelle, again, thank you. Thank you, sis, because
you're so welcome.
I needed you. I needed this. So appreciate you. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, follow, share, and most importantly, use whatever adds value to your amazing life.
And remember, even if life puts barriers in our way, we are still moving forward. Sign in again for a new episode of Winning Inside.
Thank you for listening to Winning Inside with Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to click the follow button, rate and review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcast. You can connect with Cheddy and Michelle at winninginside.io. Keep listening. Another episode is coming soon.